Well, Dave, thank you for being on again tonight so quickly after our last one. We had this really interesting email come in, as you know, and I'm going to share my screen so we can take a look at this. After the last video, somebody posted this comment on YouTube saying, I appreciated hearing Dave Butler's insights. I thought you missed the mark by not showing us how we could use Scripture Notes, the product, to help us dive deeper and get a better understanding of some of Dave's suggestions. For example, the 7 consistencies. What is the meaning of 7 consistencies? Dave talked about. How is wisdom a female? So even though wisdom isn't a female being, the word itself is feminine in Hebrew grammar. Now, what do I do with this knowledge, and how does it point me to Jesus Christ? That's why I watched this episode, to learn how to use Scripture Notes to help me as a seeker. So I thought, Dave, we've got to have another session and explore how we would go about this, because we didn't really take the time and maybe have the time to dive in deep on this last time. It was just sort of a thing I'd stumbled on, and I thought this is really cool. So neither of us are familiar with this. So this will just be kind of an exploration of how we would approach studying something like this. So
I regard myself here, Oak, as the Sancho Panza to your Don Quixote. I think you are the master of this tool. And I am going to, I think that my role here is not to try to say things that I think I know, but to try to think about questions that I would have and how I would go about trying to answer them.
yeah, well, I am no scholar on anything related to the Book of Enoch, and so between the knowledge you have of Hebrew and other resources and what we can take a look at here, I think this will be just an interesting experiment. And we're not going to try and figure out all 14 things that are listed here, but just sort of we'll dive deep maybe into a little bit, and then that will show how we would go about sort of using the tool or using just approaches to studying something that you're not familiar with. Because this is if suddenly we got the sealed portion of the Book of Mormon, we would all be going, wow, this is awesome. Now, how do I dig in, and where do I go from here? So I think this is a good exercise just to help people see kind of how a couple of guys would take a dive into something that they're not familiar with.
Yeah, I think that's great. So and this is a good choice of book too. I have read Second Enoch, but I remember very little about it. First Enoch is the Ethiopic Apocalypse written in Ge'ez, and Third Enoch is the one in Hebrew that is thought to be late and part of the Jewish mystical Hekkalot literature. I think the only thing I can remember about Second Enoch, and I don't remember whether it's true or not, is that we have it in Old Church Slavonic. Like we have it in an old Slavic language, and that's probably not the original. It was probably written in something else, and that is all I can remember.
Yeah, there's a bit online about it. When I added these into Scripture Notes, I tried to put a little bit of information that I got from online, and so there is a little bit here. It was found in Russia and Serbia. It's only been preserved in Slavonic. Little is known about its origin, except it was written somewhere around the beginning of the Christian era. So, somebody can pause this and read all of that, but that's where we're at. So,
and is that kind of about what the sort of about the information they'd find in Wikipedia or something?
Yeah, there'd be a lot more depth, I'm sure, to look some of this up online.
Okay.
So what's cool about this part, and I shared this in the prior video, is just stumbling on this. I discovered this verse 15. For I have seen his nature, but he has not seen his own nature. This is talking about Adam, and the reason that God put him on earth and taught him right from wrong, light from darkness, because God already knew Adam. He knew, like, I know what kind of person you are, but you don't know what kind of person you are. And that's the story of all of us. Like, we don't know who we are under trials and tribulations, and having been taught light from darkness, what am I going to do in that circumstance? And so in finding that verse, I started to backtrack because I was like, I don't know what I'm reading. And it turns out this is a creation story. The last few chapters build up to this, and we get to day 6. And so I'll just read this portion, and then just these couple of verses, and then we'll just discuss, like, where would you go from here? So on the 6th day, I commanded my wisdom to create man from 7 consistencies. 1, his flesh from the earth. 2, his blood from the dew. 3, his eyes from the sun. 4, his bones from stone. 5, his intelligence from the swiftness of the angels and from cloud. 6, his veins and his hair from the grass of the earth. 7, his soul from my breath and from the wind. And then it breaks and it says, and I, so up here it's I commanded my wisdom, and down here it's and I gave him 7 natures. To the flesh hearing, the eyes for sight, to the soul smell, the veins for touch, the blood for taste, the bones for endurance, and to the intelligence sweetness or enjoyment. So, well, and then he just finishes here by saying, I conceived a cunning saying to say, I created man from invisible and from visible nature. Of both are his death and life and image. He knows speech like some created thing, small in greatness and again great in smallness. And I placed him on earth. So I'm not sure if this a second angel part is a new concept or talking about him, but a second angel, honorable, great, and glorious, and I appointed him as ruler to rule on earth and to have my wisdom, and there was none like him of earth of all my existing creatures. So let's start off with wisdom. The question was asked, wisdom is a feminine name. Well, I guess I should just start off by saying, what are your initial impressions? Like, what are your initial thoughts kind of reading that fresh?
Well, so again, I'm going to sort of try not to say, here's what I think already, but think about this like a priori as much as possible. So this is the story about the creation of Adam, and the author is trying to tell us something about Adam. One of the things I think it's clear is that he wants to connect Adam to the number 7, because he gives 2 lists. So so an interest, and he also wants to connect Adam to wisdom, which may or may not be the same thing, because he says, I commanded my wisdom to create man. And then he says later down, and I with to have my wisdom. Verse 12, Adam is a second angel, honorable, great and glorious, to have my wisdom. So I got a series of questions here that I would want to answer in the first place within this text. So this might be an interesting thing for your tool here, right? One would be, what else do we know about wisdom from this same author? A second thing would be, let me jot these down. So one, within Second Enoch, what does Second Enoch say about wisdom?
Yeah, and I just plugged that in as in all of Enoch. There's 51 references to wisdom, but let me back that off to just Second Enoch. Whoops.
I would be interested in knowing what the other occurrences are of the number 7. I would be interested in trying to figure out who the first angel is. So I would be interested in looking for appearances of the word angel I mean, not every text is in good order, and even a text that was originally in good order, we may not have it in good order. But in theory, it ought to be before this chapter, right? In theory,
Mhm.
there ought to be an angel. If it was a well-written and a complete text, there should be a first angel and then a second angel, right? And that would, I mean, your guess, my guess would be, not remembering anything about the content of this, is it's probably going to tell us that that the first angel is Christ, would be my guess. Uh,
Well, you,
Assuming that it's Christian.
yeah, okay. So I just started doing some filtered searches as
Okay,
you were
good.
kicking those out.
All right,
Okay.
so give us some answers.
Okay, so let's take a look at this. So wisdom in Second Enoch is mentioned 7 times. The number 7 is mentioned in 10 verses. Angel or angels is mentioned in 30 verses, but then angel and first is mentioned once, and angel and second is mentioned twice. So those were like you're kicking that out, and I'm like, oh, these are good. Let's see what this says. So let's just start with this first angel because there's only one
Okay.
verse.
Okay.
It came to pass when Enoch had told his sons that the angels took him onto their wings and bore him up to the first heaven and placed him on the clouds. And there I looked, and again I looked higher and saw the ether. And they placed me on the first heaven and showed me a very great sea, greater than the earthly sea. Now, I didn't put like first angel in quotes. I did angel and first. So it didn't actually
So it's first
reference like a
heaven.
first angel here.
We've
Uh,
learned something interesting though. Let me make a comment,
yeah.
and I'm already breaking my rules. So, this idea of first heaven is interesting because the idea of tiered heavens ultimately goes back to the multiple tiers of the temple. And so, in the oldest visions in which heaven is tiered, you tend to see three. And then the more you go on, the more complex and baroque, the more people are detached from what actually they're originally writing about, right? The more they don't remember, oh, this is the temple and there are 3 levels. The more they say, well, there were 72 heavens, there were 99 heavens, there were 999 heavens, right? Because they start to exaggerate. It's like the number of tables in the temple. Okay, the Exodus says there's one. Kings and Chronicles say there are 10 because that sounds more important and fancier than one. Josephus, in the Antiquities of the Jews, claims that Solomon had 10,000 tables of gold in his temple. Well, that's obviously nonsense, right? So, so this is then this text I'm going to expect within Enoch somewhere, it's going to matter that we're going up and down uh, multiple levels of heaven, right? And that this is going to connect us to visions of the future and the past and the cosmos and to temple ideas.
Okay, that's great. And so when you started saying, that this is probably some kind of 3 tiers of heaven or whatever, I did a quick search for second plus heaven over here, and
Hmm.
I didn't read this. I just kicked that in real quick, but I saw second heaven. Those men took me and led me up onto the second heaven. Now this is 4 chapters later, so there
Uh-huh.
could be some ascension going on.
Yeah. And the first heaven was a sea, right? That's what he saw in the first heaven. Oh, is that over here?
Showed
Uh,
me a very great sea, yeah,
yeah.
greater than the earthly sea.
And then over here we have darkness.
Darkness.
Uh,
Let
and
me,
these angels were dark looking.
yeah,
So it's
after them held in great darkness on the second heaven, and 3 of them went down. Now, this Satanale, I believe, is Satan. There's a reference to that in the creation story around 2nd Enoch 28 or something on day 2. I believe it's Satanale is cast out with the order of angels that he was over. There's like 10 orders of angels. So pretty sure that's Satan.
this is a common motif. So this is one of the main stories of First Enoch, which is the oldest and original that we have. Enoch book. Um, and the story of the fallen angels and either sort of seeing their punishment, or in First Enoch, they ask Enoch to help them. Please intercede with God on our behalf. It's a very common story told in the Enoch literature. Um, Usually, at least in Hebrew, it's very common to see angel names that end in an L. It's a theophoric element. It means God, and because so this is in Slavonic, right? So
Yeah.
we don't know what language it was originally in, but Satanael might have been meant to be something like the accuser of God, or God's the prosecutor of God, something like that.
Yeah. In fact, okay, let me bring up just real quick this and
But we definitely have a guy going up through heavens. Although it's weird because the sea darker than an earthly sea sounds like a creation story, but then it sounds like a vision of hell in the second level of the heaven, right? The dark angels, darker than earthly men, are hanging there. It sounds like they're being punished in this level of heaven.
yeah. Okay, so it's 29. One out of the order of angels, having turned away with the order that was under him, conceived an impossible thought to place his throne higher than the clouds above the earth, that he might become equal in rank to my power. Then I threw him out from the height with his angels, and he was flying in the air continuously above the bottomless. And so that is on day 2, which is kind of interesting to me because we don't know exactly when Satan was cast out. Was it in the premortal council, or was that just sort of like, hey, send me down, I'll be, in charge and I'll save everybody? And it was like, no, we're going to pick Jehovah. God's going to pick Jehovah. And, did Satan really rebel so seriously at that moment in time that it's like he's cast out, or is he there for a while? Building his troops, trying to promote his idea. And then at some point, he's like, I'm going to ascend, above God. And it's like day 2 of creation. I don't know. That's how Enoch puts it, at least in this account,
What
which
what
is,
did it say about day one? Because we're still looking for the first angel, right? So it can't be that Satanael is the first angel. That's
right.
an interesting story.
Okay.
Um,
Let's see if it starts here. So
and
he
there,
summoned the very lowest a second time. This is like, I have to go back a little further. Go down. Okay. I said be opened, Arcus, whatever this, it's like um uncreated space maybe. Uh but it's like alive. I don't know how far back to go here.
hmm.
25. God relates to Enoch how out of the very lowest darkness comes the visible and invisible, which to me is like element and intelligence. Um and so he saw it was good. Um which I don't know which chapter it fully starts in, but
Yeah. What's in like
becomes
20, 27, 28? We sort of skipped over a couple real fast.
yeah, okay,
26,
so
what's that?
27, God commanded there should be taken from light and darkness, be thick. It became thus, and I spread out the light. It became water. I spread it out over the darkness below the light. Then I made firm the waters, that is to say, the bottomless, and I made foundation of light around the water and created 7 circles from inside.
And
And
here's the number seven coming up a couple times.
yeah, and imaged the water like crystal, wet and dry, that is to say, like glass, and the circumcision of the waters and the other elements, and I showed each one of them its road, and the 7 stars, each one of them in its heaven, that they go thus, and I saw that it was good, and I separated between light and between darkness, that is to say, in the midst of the water, hither and thither. And I said to the light, it should be day, and darkness, it should be night. And there was evening and morning the first day.
So what's in 28? I think 28 is something we haven't seen. So this is the first day. There's a
Yeah.
there's a from the heavenly circle. Huh. Okay, so it's the firmament, and it's the sea is limited. Oh, okay. So we're still looking for here's why I was curious. There's an old controversy about when angels were created. And some of the old books say that angels were created on the first day of creation, and some of them say they were not. And I was just curious if that would come up here, if that would tell us who the first angel on earth is, because the second angel is Adam.
Well, right here in
Oh, there
chapter
we go.
29, he says, "From the rock I cut off a great fire, and from the fire I created the orders of the incorporeal 10 troops of angels. And their weapons are fiery, and their raiment a burning flame. And I commanded that each one should stand in his order, and one from out of the order of angels, having turned away, is this angel that led them away. So 10 troops of angels, and essentially day two, I guess.
Or it might be late in day one, right?
Well, okay, so this gets a little tricky because the very next verse is on
Oh,
the
it's the
third
third
day.
day. Okay,
But
that's interesting.
this is R.H. Charles's translation, and he
Yeah.
makes this note here. These are his headings. Monday is the first day, but you go back and it's like this day. I called me the first created Sunday. So it's like there's a little bit of ambiguity between like first day, second day
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Okay, so we're still looking for there's so many interesting little side quests here. So we're still
Yeah.
looking for who was the first angel. Did you say there were 10 references to wisdom?
There were 10 orders of angels. Oh, yes. Sorry. Wisdom, there's 7 references, 7 verses here. And
Oh, well, that's interesting in itself, isn't it? That's very kind of meta.
yeah,
We're looking for the number 7
and we
and
get 10.
and for what wisdom is, and we get 7 appearances of wisdom.
Yeah. So so if I can jump back for a sec,
Yeah.
I the first thing that came to me as I was looking at this creation was you've seen those images of the 7 chakras. And I was
Uh-huh.
like, "Oh, so you've got, I don't know what they are exactly, head, the mouth, the heart, and down, for all 7 of them." And I just thought, well, it's interesting on a couple levels because 7 is so symbolic. And here it's like there's 7 feminine qualities and 7 masculine natures or something being brought together. So there's like 14. So it's like you get this idea of a duality. And the number 14 also is the number for David, DVD, the 464. So I was just like, maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's so symbolic that it's really hard to tell, but it seems like this is a perfect blending of the male and female creation components to create, they're like this perfect creation. So we have 7 and 7 being brought
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. Um, there is a lot to say about 7, and it does have associations with wisdom. Let's look at these verses where wisdom is mentioned and see if we can figure out what it means. Wisdom is somebody or something that creates man, right? So what is it?
Okay. So this one, there's an archangel whose knowledge was quicker in wisdom than other archangels. This one is the verse we read in Second Enoch 30.
Yep.
We also went down to this one to have my wisdom, uh, all that I have written in books by my great wisdom, all these things I have devised, like sort of the idea God doesn't take anything into his mind except he does it, maybe. My thought is my counselor, my wisdom and my word are made. It's kind of interesting.
Boy, that
Uh,
is actually super interesting. Um,
Going to pause there or keep going?
well,
We'll pause.
uh,
We'll pause.
I don't, okay. I don't want to, but the exercise is not supposed to be. This will be us exploring and finding out stuff. But I guess to some extent, it's inevitable. We have to talk about things that we know. So, wisdom is often thought to be a stand-in for a divine feminine presence. It is also connected with the tree of life and the menorah in the temple. That's why it's connected with the number seven. It's got seven branches of the menorah. By the way, seven's got other great stuff going on. There are seven visible planets. In the old meaning of planet, where a planet was not something that orbited the sun, but a planet was a thing that was not stuck in fixed relationship to all of the stars, as the stars are. If you look at the stars, they spin around together. They do if you look at them long enough to have proper motion. But that's you have to be watching them for years to see that, right? Whereas the seven planets move relative to the stars, and so it's Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the Moon, and the Sun are the seven planets, right? And so there's a cosmic thing, but verse chapter 33 verse 4, the reason it catches my eyes is because okay, so if wisdom is a feminine divine presence, right? And that again that's super common. That's I am not saying that. That's a very common. There's lots of Proverbs 3 says that, suggests that, lots of other passages. The word is also a divine presence, right? John 1:1, in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God, right?
Mhm.
So um that looks to me like the sort of divine family all together in one verse. But we only have seven references to wisdom, and so far they're it's not a slam dunk, right? Like a lot of these just seem to be there's this strange thing that wisdom created Adam, but then wisdom just kind of seems to mean wisdom, right? Like,
Well, it does. I mean, like the verse in uh, right here, I commanded my wisdom to create man from seven consistencies. Let me add
right.
that next verse right in here. And I gave him seven natures. I guess like one of the things I would do is I'd come in here and say, well, what is consistency? Let me just pull up like Webster's. A standing together, a being fixed in union as the parts of a body, that state of a body in which its component parts remain fixed. The consistency of bodies is diverse, a degree of density, substance, firmness of constitution, resolutions, standing together as the parts of a system, harmony, a standing state of rest, which things are capable of growth or decrease. So I like to, understand the words that I'm dealing with.
And
And
let's look at the verse too, right? So because it lists the seven consistencies,
right.
which are the earth, the dew, the sun. So I think something like substances, right? So Adam is thought to have some kind of element of each of these things in his nature.
Yeah. So dust of the earth is flesh,
Yeah.
blood from the dew. So moisture. I don't know if there's anything else. Eyes from the sun. The light of the body is the eyes, brings in the sun. Bones from stone. Intelligence from the swiftness of the angels and from cloud. Not sure the symbolism of this. His veins in his hair from the grass of the earth. I guess they're stringy.
Well, there's an interesting. I was just looking at this earlier today. There's a curious theme repeated across a lot of scripture. So, off the top of my head, I think it's Matthew 6:30, but it's also Isaiah 40, maybe verse 9, Isaiah 51, something. There's this comparison of flesh to grass That is, I don't know what the origin is for sure, but it's a, at least it's a cliche that all
Hmm.
flesh is grass.
Interesting.
Yeah. The soul being breath is interesting. In one of the words for spirit is ruach, which is also the word for breath. So
Mhm.
again, that might mean this comes from Hebrew, or it might mean that it shows an awareness of Hebrew, or that originally it came from something, related to Hebrew. That might be the where that idea comes from.
Okay.
So, but I like that. So another place we could go, and we have not finished every one of these threads we've grabbed onto. We haven't followed all the way to the end, but
Right.
um, you could see if consistencies appear elsewhere in the book.
Right. Right.
And in theory, a list, discussion of consistencies in some other book could be relevant too. Um, but I like looking within the same book because it looks like it's just the one verse.
Yep.
Because you're more likely dealing with just one writer.
Hmm.
Um, that's not always true, but it's more likely. And then you hope they have consistent thoughts.
Right. This is the bottom of the list for the
For the
verses on
wisdom.
wisdom. Some for wisdom of heart, fixed a measure by his wisdom. So I think there are a couple of interesting verses that we've kind of briefly touched on. Um,
Yeah.
this, this one in 33 and 4, I pulled that chapter up. It says, God shows Enoch the age of this world, its existence of 7,000 years. The 8,000th is the end, neither years nor months nor weeks nor days. So he appointed the eighth day also, that the eighth day should be the first created after my work, and that the first seven revolve in the form of the 7,000. Enoch, I've told you all so you can understand. I've devised and created from the uppermost foundation to the lower. There is no counselor nor inheritor to my creations. I'm self eternal, not made with hands, and without change. My thought is my counselor, my wisdom and my word are made. My eyes observe all things. If I turn my face, then all things will be destroyed. And apply your mind, Enoch, and know him who is speaking to you, and take thence the books which you yourself have written. Hmm. I'm not familiar enough to know if these two people here, Samuel and Raguel, are angels or some other beings. But he says, "Who led you up?" And the books go down to earth. Tell your sons all I've told you, and all you've seen from the lower heaven up to my throne and all the troops. Give them the books of the handwriting. They will read them and know me for the creator of all things, and will understand how there is no other God but me. So it's a little like the not the book of remembrance, but like he's given him books to go down and teach his family. He's a witness, and as part of that mission or assignment, he's supposed to preach the gospel.
Yes. I also think I think this chapter at least has has a raging case of monotheism. So verse 9, there is no other God but me. So that changes. So if you look at verse 4, I think what he's actually saying in verse 4, I think he is referencing wisdom in the word, but I think he's saying uh my thought. I am the lone I am alone, I am the alone unique God. My thought is counselor. My thought is my wisdom. My thought is my word. It is just me.
Hmm.
Um, so now I'm wondering if this is Christian. It might not be.
Hmm.
Uh, if it might in fact be an Enoch text uh, that rejects um, that rejects Christ, um, or has some layers that do. Anyway, that's okay. So So that's very interesting to read that whole chapter all the way through. But it does seem very odd. The verse that says, I commanded my wisdom
Mhm.
to, because that seems like that's really the only verse, that's the only line of all the seven verses that refer to wisdom, in which wisdom seems like it's a separate being.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
sure what it seems like to me. Like there's a role for what a mother and a father do. Let us create man in our image. So they have some different role. Um, one is consistencies, one is natures. I don't know. The natures that are listed.
yeah, let's look at the natures. And now
So
let's see what else then we got seven of. So seven natures.
yeah, to the flesh hearing, and up here, flesh is from the earth. The eyes for sight. Here it's the third one, his eyes from the sun. To the soul smell. I don't think the nose or smell was mentioned up there.
But the soul is, right? Seven is his
Yeah,
soul from my breath and from the wind.
that's right. That's right. The veins for touch, and that was the grass up here.
So that's interesting.
The veins for touch. Why is that interesting to you?
Well, it's interesting to me. Well, I don't think I understand that. The thing that's interesting to me is that these correlate, but they're jumbled.
Mm,
It's not like so far they're we haven't got to the end of the list, but so far they're all there, but they're in different order.
yeah.
The
Okay.
blood for taste and his blood for the dew, bones for endurance and his bones for stone. So it is, right? So these seven correlate to those seven. But for
Yeah.
some reason, then
Intelligence from the swiftness, and here it's intelligence is sweetness or enjoyment. Hmm.
but for some reason they're not in order. That's interesting. But they're meant to correlate, I think, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else did we get seven of? And does it all correlate? Is it all built on a scheme of seven?
These two. Let's see. What other sevens are there? Okay, so there were
We had
10
10.
verses with seven.
Yeah.
All right. 7 hours in the night. Hmm. Seven bands of angels. Seven circles from inside. Each one of the seven stars, each one of them in its heaven. So like seven heavens. This
And
is
a star, a very common idea in these kind of heavenly visions, these temple ascent visions, is that a star is the same thing as an angel and is sometimes the same thing as a priest. So these seven stars, this might be like the seven archangels that might also correlate to the seven visible planets that might all be thought to go
got it.
to line up.
Okay, so the seven consistencies, the seven right there, seven natures, and then we got the first seven. Let's see, I appointed the eighth day to be created after my work. That the first 7 days, I guess, revolve in the form of the seventh thousand. The sun go along the seven heavenly circles. From the 17th, let's see, he appointed seven. So and the Lord saw all man's works, created all his creatures, and divided time
That's the
for
week.
months and years. Yeah, he appointed 7 day of days. Yep. Adam was formerly during a period of 7 years. What was I will send my chief captain Michael, and he shall take the child and place him in the paradise of Eden. Not sure about that. 70 years. Melchizedek, he shall find there another Melchizedek. So this is Noah. The Lord shall tell him to come out upon that mountain where the ark of thy brother Noah shall stand, and he shall find there another Melchizedek who's lived there 7 years, concealing himself from the people who worship idols.
Huh. So okay, that's interesting. Does the app 3, App 4, I mean appendices? Like, are these like at the end?
Yeah. Actually, so if I go to this and just pull up the menu, there's 4 appendix chapters on the exaltation of Melchizedek. I don't know the exact relationship of those 4 to the earlier 68 chapters,
Oh.
but they, in some fashion, they're related.
So it looks to me like the number 7. Tell me what you think, Oak. It looks to me like the number 7 here is being used to measure things that are complete, or the completeness of things. 7 days in the week, 7,000 years in the history of the world, 7 heavens, right? Seven stars in the 7 heavens. Man is made of 7 things, which correlate to 7 natures. So there's a pervasive sevenness. I don't know that it has. I don't obviously see that it necessarily connects with other kinds of sevens. Maybe it does, but at least we could say, look, man, God here commanded his wisdom to make man whole, like the cosmos, right? And there's an idea, there's an old idea that the I'm losing words. It's too late at night for me. The local corresponds with the cosmic, right? So Adam, the universe, 7 stars, 7 days, 7 heavens, 7 weeks. Adam's got 7 parts also, right?
Hmm.
He's in tune. He's at one.
And it's got, I mean, that to me seems very Hebrew, that 7 is used that way. I don't know what other cultures look at the number 7 in that way, but like completeness, perfection, seems like there's a very Hebrewish meaning of it, use there.
7 for sure is a super interesting number for the Hebrew scriptures. And the joy and also the problem of like number stuff is, once you get into it, you can find all kinds of correlations and correspondences, right?
Yeah.
That's why I think it's interesting to look and see what the 7s are within this text. All right, so what have we? Okay, so we don't still know who the first angel is, though it might be Michael. What if we look at Michael? Let's see if we find somewhere that's saying that Michael's the first angel. Because if Michael's the first angel, then I think this is a Jewish text and not a Christian one. And Michael's the first angel, and then there's Adam. And I think we found a verse basically denying that wisdom or the word are divine, that I, the unique God, am.
Okay, so here we go. The strategate Michael lifted me up and led me before the Lord's face. So maybe he's the guide. And the Lord said to Michael, "Go and take Enoch out of his earthly garments and anoint him with my sweet ointment and put him into the garments of my glory." Michael did thus. As the Lord told him, he anointed me and dressed me, and the appearance of that ointment is more than the great light, I guess the sun, and his ointment is like sweet dew. It's sweet, and its smell mild, shining like the sun's ray. And I looked at myself, and I was like one of the glorious ones.
So the dew is interesting because we saw that Adam's blood is made of dew. So dew, and I was going to say actually in Psalm 110, which is hard to read, it seems that the Melchizedek priest is born, not made, but the anointing oil is compared to dew. But I'm glad it didn't say that, because this book says it, right? The anointment. So that means that for this author, we don't have to say, oh, but in Psalms it says this. So this writer So Adam is the kind of creature that has anointing oil for his blood. Um, and this is interesting, right? Being dressed and anointed by an angel. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure what that word means, but strategos in Greek is a general. So an archistratege or an archist, I don't know, I don't know what that right. Archistratege might mean an archgeneral where heaven is conceived of as being an army, which is consistent with what you were reading earlier about the 10 troops of angels.
Mm-hmm.
So this seems like heaven is like a military organization. I bet that means that Michael is the number one, um, is the first angel and Adam's the second, right? Is that what we read? A second and placed him on earth a second angel.
Mm,
Um,
yeah. Hmm. That's, I don't know. Let's see what else is here. Um, so I added in verse 10 that doesn't have the word Michael, but I wanted to see
what's in between?
continuity here.
Yeah.
And the Lord summoned one of his archangels by the name Pravul, whose knowledge was quicker in wisdom than the other archangels, who wrote all the deeds of the Lord. And the Lord said to Pravul, bring out the books from my storehouses and a reed of quick writing and give it to Enoch and deliver to him the choice and comforting books out of your hand. And I will give you, Enoch, my intercessor, the archistrategy Michael, for the handwritings of your fathers, Adam, Seth, Enos, Canaan, Mahalaleel, and Jared, your father. So he's going to get like the book of remembrance of his earthly fathers, but he's being shown in this heavenly vision something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if so. Uh, I was just quickly Googling to confirm my memory.
Mm-hmm.
The name Pravuil, right? So if we assume that Il is attempting to be means God and it's sort of the marker of the angel's name, what's Pravu? That doesn't look like Hebrew to me. And I thought, wasn't the name of the Soviet newspaper Pravda? Didn't that mean truth? And I just Googled it and it does. So I wonder if that means if that name Pravuil in Slavonic is meant to sort of mean the truth of God.
Oh, that's really cool.
In a kind of a Slavonic Hebrew mashup a little bit.
Hmm, that's very
Um,
interesting. Oh, that opens up a whole new world thinking about some of these names as Slavic.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And that seems like an interesting name for an angel who he looks like Thoth. He's like the keeper of all the writing, right? He's
Mm-hmm.
secretary angel. Um,
Hmm. Yeah, he's the media, the the newspaper
he's
editor.
he's the newspaper editor of the 10 troops of heaven.
Yeah.
That is correct.
All right, let's see these last few. In a short time, I will send my chief captain, Michael. So that's another evidence that maybe he's like the first angel.
Yeah.
He shall take the child and place him in the paradise of Eden, in the garden where Adam was formerly. I don't know this story. Oh, this is in the appendix about the
Oh,
ascension of
Melchizedek.
Melchizedek. Yeah. When the child had been 40 days under the roof of Ner, the Lord said to Michael, go down on the earth to Ner, the priest, and take my child Melchizedek, who is with him, and place him in the paradise of Eden for preservation. Oh, this is before the flood. So it's like, I don't know this story,
Oh, but
but
this is amazing. This story is amazing. What's the
yeah,
next verse?
it,
So
uh,
Melchizedek survives the
hold
flood
on.
by being
Here, we'll
hidden
get
in
the,
Eden.
I just added the next verse in. And I will establish another race, and Melchizedek shall be the chief of the priests in that family, just as Seth is to me in this family. Michael hastened and came by night, and Ner was sleeping in his bed. Michael appeared to him and said, the Lord says unto thee, Ner, send the child to me. I entrusted him to thee. And Ner did not know that the chief captain Michael was speaking to him, and his heart was confused. And he said, if the people know about the child and take him, they will slay him. For the heart of this people is crafty before the face of the Lord. And Ner said to him who spoke to him, the child is not with me. I do not know who thou art. who art speaking to me. Okay, I won't add all the in between verses. But yeah, that's
See 5 verses later, he's at the end of this confrontation with the boy's father as he takes the child and puts him in Eden, right? This is a story about, so Eden is the temple, Eden is a mountain, Eden is what's behind the veil. And so this is a super interesting connection that, first of all, what is it, verse 3 or something? Melchizedek is being set up as an alternative priesthood line, right?
mhm.
So this is, I do think, my guess is if we look this up in Wikipedia, we're going to, my guess is this is basically a non-Christian text, or the thinking is it's probably Jews or somebody who are not Christian, because we're not seeing Jesus anywhere. We're seeing Michael, right?
We saw Lord several times, but I don't know if that's back to like there's only one Lord, and that's the monotheism
Yeah, it
stuff
would be
we're talking about.
interesting to know what that is translating in Slavonic too, right?
Hmm.
Um,
But this is
but
super interesting. I mean, because the Lord said to Michael, "It's like, come, Michael,"
yes,
you know.
yes, let us go down.
So it has a certain ring to it.
Yes. Um, it is interesting. But this story, this is not, we're not answering, like, we don't know the answers to the question we started with. That's okay. We're learning a lot of stuff. This is a story which includes the idea that Melchizedek survives the destruction of the world by being hidden away in the cosmic temple in Eden, and that it was known already, right? This is what Alma says in Alma 13, that the priests after the order of Melchizedek were foreordained, right? And then they, having been foreordained, they earn their place by their righteousness. Um, that's what this story says. Melchizedek was when he was a boy, they knew he was going to be a priest and an alternative priest to Seth and the line of priests that Seth was creating. So this is my guess is this is from a Judaism that um, still at least remembers that there were Melchizedek priests, and those were different from the sort of Mosaic priests, and that mattered and was worth respecting. So I think that's super interesting.
Yeah. Hmm. Um, okay, I am curious about this name here, just to see
Probably.
if, yeah, Pravuil. Okay, it only appears in a couple of verses. Lord summoned this archangel, and then Pravuil told me all the things I've told you we have written, sit and write all the souls of mankind. So, yeah. All right. Um, hmm. Let's look for a sec at these heavens. We didn't
Oh yeah, how many heavens are there?
yeah, so they went up to the second heaven, which was darkness. First one was the sea, right?
And the first day of creation was also putting bounds to the sea. So I wonder if the second heaven corresponds to the second day of creation in some way.
Hmm. It showed me darkness, earthly darkness, greater than earthly darkness. Um, Second heaven, let's see. These are the Grigori with their prince Satanael, rejected the Lord of Light. After them are those who are held in great darkness on the second heaven. And three of them went down onto earth from the Lord's throne to the place Irmon, and broke through their vows on the shoulder of the hill Irmon, and saw the daughters of men. Oh, this is like the Watchers. How good they are, and took to themselves wives, and befouled the earth with their deeds, who in all times of their age made lawlessness and mixing, and giants are born, and marvelous big men, and great enmity.
So this is the Watchers, and Grigori, I'm pretty sure in Greek, Gregoreo is to watch over, to be a
Oh,
pastor. So I think that they are the Watchers, but also look at, okay, there's a there's a cooler thing here. Um, Boy, now I'm like afraid that I'm going to remember this wrong. But I think in the Book of Mormon we have a wilderness called Hermounts, don't we?
Yeah. What did you say that in Greek, Grigori is like one who watches? How'd you say that?
Gregoreo, I think, is the verb to watch over. So the name Gregory means like shepherd or pastor. So I think the Grigori are literally the watchers, and they are watchers, like, not, there's different senses of watcher in the word English, right? They're not like peeping toms, they are shepherds. They're those who
Hmm.
over. Um,
And that, yeah, that I've heard that expressed before as well, that they're like they violated their oath. They were meant to like watch over, but then they stepped across that boundary, so to speak. So
right. Sleeping with human women, or depending on the story,
yeah.
sometimes it's sharing heavenly secrets, right? Like sort of arts that man was not supposed to know. Sometimes it's like magic or metallurgy or cosmetics.
Yeah.
Um, okay, hold on. I have to look this up though. I'm pretty sure that in the Book of Mormon, there's
You
a
want,
wilderness called Hermounts,
yeah,
right?
there is. Yeah.
Uh, so that's super interesting to see what looks to me like the same name.
What,
And I think that Hugh Nibley connected this to Hermonthis, which was like an Egyptian, um, yeah, Alma too.
yep.
They were met on every hand, slain and driven, till they reached the wilderness, which was called Hermounts. It was infested by wild beasts. Okay, hold on. So let's just,
So
what is this book?
Ermon, is that what you're comparing it to?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, which is a hill, but we don't hear anything about it.
Hmm.
So let me tell you why. I think I might have said this last time. I have a terrible habit of repeating myself, Oak. But um, the Nephites applied some names to their geography that are clearly names that have like sacred meaning. Okay.
Mhm.
So did we talk about the name Bountiful before? I think we did, didn't we?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
It came up, but it only. Go ahead.
Let me tell you something amazing.
Okay.
All right. Back in 2013. By the way, if I put stuff in the chat, will people see it? Or
No, no,
okay,
but I mean, like if you do, I
you'll
can
see
add
it.
it into the video.
Okay. So a guy named Zionitsavit, and you can guess from his name that he's not like from Farmington, Utah. Okay. A guy named Zionitsavit publishes a book called What Really Happened in the Garden of Eden. And one of the things he does is he translates the name Eden. Okay. And he looks at the sort of Aramaic, and he looks at Akkadian, and he looks at um, uh, the word Adina when it enters Egyptian. What does it mean? And he translates Eden as bountiful. Okay. Which, like, if you're a Mormon and you're like, oh, I'm rooting for this word, right? Bountiful would be like your first pick. Because not only did the Nephites use that name in the journey in the old world, they then apply it to a place in the new world, right? This is my point, is that apparently the Nephites named the place where the temple was that Christ ultimately visits them at. Apparently they name it Eden. So they're applying a name that has like or something very close to Eden. So they're applying a name that has a theological significance. So I was just wondering if Hermounts, the wilderness of Hermounts, might be similar. If it showed up in other contexts and it had like a theological meaning, right?
Hmm.
But here, I don't think we have enough to tell. All we can tell is there's a place called Ermon. Although actually, that'd be interesting. Do you mind checking and seeing if the name Ermon comes up anywhere else?
Oh yeah, let's see. Let's see. You just actually give me another idea. Let me just I'm just going to see if it pops up.
Scroll.
So here, a Baal Hermon, Hermonites. Um, I just popped it into the lexicon, and
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to see any of these. I just proper locative noun, a Baal Hermon, Lord of Destruction, a city near or on Mount Hermon, named as a seat of Baal worship. Um, Baal Hermon. Okay,
So
so
there's
that's
a hill called Hermon uh in Israel. So that's the thing I didn't know.
so right here
Proper
is
name of a mountain, Hermon, sacred mountain,
a sanctuary. Hmm.
the highest peak of the anti-Lebanon range. Very interesting.
This one also a sanctuary. Hmm. Well, that is pretty interesting.
Yeah, actually, that latter one, Hermonim, might be Hermounts would not be a terrible literal translation of basically the plural of Hermon. It's a mountain name, Hermounts. That might literally be that. So
Hmm.
that's interesting. I wonder if there's probably some guy wrote a Farms update in like 1988 or something, making this point, and I just not previously aware of it. Uh, I wonder if the Nephites. See, now I want this is a whole other research project. Now I want to go look in the Bible and see what happens in Mount Hermon, and if any of that might relate to Hermounts in Alma chapter 2. But that is a project for another day, I think.
Yeah. Well, so the Blue Letter Bible site has those verses down here that use that word. So that
Yeah.
is something that you or somebody could look at another time
Yeah.
if you don't want to do it right now. But that is super interesting. I love that you connected that to Mount Hermounts in the Book of Mormon, and then we go on this little chase. And what was it you asked me to do before I punched the lexicon? Oh, to see where else it is
In
in
this book, yeah.
Okay, okay.
I'm a Book of Mormon guy, okay? I know the Book of Mormon better than the other ones.
Okay, that's the only verse
Huh, interesting.
in there.
Interesting. So I wonder if that's associated. I mean, that's a whole other project. If, like, in the Enoch literature, if that comes up and if that's generally associated with the fallen angels.
So Ermon, that is the only that one verse is the only thing in the entire scripture notes library that has
Oh,
that particular word.
yeah, yeah. But it might come through, if that's the Slavonic version, it might be like
Yeah,
Herman or something else, right?
sure, sure. Okay.
Um, all right. So where are we? What are the threads you need to chase down still?
Okay, so we're right here, Hermounts. We're looking at second heaven, and then I did third heaven, and
Oh,
let
here
me
we go.
next couple of verses here because that's really short. So those men took me thence, led me up onto the third heaven, and placed me there. And I looked downwards and saw the produce of these places, such as has never been known for goodness. Sweet flowering trees, their fruits, foods borne
And the
by
tree
them.
of life.
Yeah, in the midst of the trees, that of life, in that place whereon the Lord rests when he goes up into paradise. And this tree is of ineffable goodness and fragrance, and adorned more than every existing thing. And on all sides, it is in form gold looking and vermilion and fire like, and covers all, and it has produce from all fruits.
So this is basically right, in the sense that this is how the Sermon on the Mount see it. This is how Revelation 22 sees it, that there are three heavens, and the top heaven is Eden, and that's where the tree of life is, or where it will be restored to in the future. So now here's the interesting test. Does it end there, or is there a fourth heaven in Second Enoch? This is
Right.
did they go crazy and add more heavens, or did they say three is the right number and we're done?
Well, let's see here. Let me just close a couple of these as we go. I'm going to go four with a wild card,
Yep.
because it could be fourth or four
Yep.
or something. So let's see what we get here. Showed me the fourth heaven.
They
Showed
had
me,
and they couldn't be content with having the right thing. They had to add stuff.
what it did mention earlier, the seven heavenly circles, and I see down here, the fourth day. So I wonder if
They've got to have
we'll,
seven heavens.
we'll see. Yeah, I can do those searches real quick, but those men took me, led me up onto the fourth heaven, showed me all the successive goings and all the rays of the light of sun and moon. I mean, this does have a certain feel for sort of matching the creation
Yep.
days.
I'm sure that's intentional. And there is something sort of beautiful it's saying about Adam here, right? Like the view of the author is that Adam matters because Adam corresponds to earth and he corresponds to time and he corresponds to heaven. So he's not just a mote. He's not just a beast. He
Mm-hmm.
he is built on the significant number, like all the significant things are.
Okay, let's see. 7 hours. Where's it? There we go. For since the crown of its shining is in heaven with the Lord, it's under the western gates. I don't know. It's guarded by 400 angels. The sun goes round on wheel under the earth. I don't know if is that the wheel of time, Dave?
That's interesting. The Egyptians thought, or the picture the Egyptians used to talk about the sun was that it was a boat and
Mm,
that it sailed across the sky, which was an ocean, and then it sailed through the marshes in the west, and then it sailed across an ocean underneath the earth to come up back on the other side. Right? This is interesting. It's a wheel.
yeah. So the sun goes round on wheel under the earth, stands 7 hours in the night, spends half its course under the earth. Anyway, and then there's four ranks in heaven. I stood with those two men, four trumpets trumpeted together. Grigori broke into song. Their voice went up before the Lord. And then this other one, let's try five.
Yeah, I want to see the fifth heaven. I wonder if the wheel, there, I think it's Chronicles 28. There's a verse in the Old Testament that explicitly says that the Ark of the Covenant is God's chariot. And I wonder if that's the idea, is that God is a little bit like Ra. He is the sun, or the sun is a little, is maybe it's not God, but it's a chariot and is going around on its wheel around the earth.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here we go. Fifth heaven. Get those highlighted again. I said to the men who were with me, wherefore are these incessantly tortured? They answered me, these are God's apostates who obeyed not God's commands, but took counsel with their own will, turned away with their prince, Satan, who also is fastened on the fifth heaven. That's kind of interesting.
That might not be in the fifth heaven, right? Because that's chapter 7, whereas chapter 18 is this is I mean, it seems like it's 11 chapters away.
Yeah. So this fourth heaven is mentioned first in chapter 11, and then fifth heaven, place me in the fifth heaven, four ranks. Yeah, it is. It doesn't, it'd be interesting to like lay these out side by side because here's the third heaven being talked about in chapter 8, but the fifth heaven is being talked about in chapter 7, and the fourth heaven in 11.
Right. I wonder if
11.
we're seeing the watchers in heaven, and I wonder if we are, um because of the way we're jumping around, we're not seeing the order in which it's laid out, right? I wonder if in the context of the book, which has at least 33 chapters, right, plus 4 appendices about Melchizedek, I wonder if we see the Watchers first before they fall and then after they fall, right? Because before they fall, they're in the fifth heaven, or at least at some point they're in the fifth heaven, right? That's chapter 18. The soldiers called Grigori. They look like humans, except they're bigger than giants and their faces are withered. And that's interesting. It says the silence of their mouths is perpetual.
Which verse are you looking at right there? Oh, down here. Yeah, silence.
Yeah. Because I could have sworn we just saw a verse where they sang.
Yeah. Right here, the Grigori broke into song. The Grigori of human appearance, their size was greater than that of great giants.
That's the same chapter. That chapter, that's 6 verses apart.
Uh-huh.
So at some point,
But this isn't the fourth heaven. This is just talking about 4 ranks in heaven. That's why that came up on that search.
right,
So that chapter, that would be an interesting chapter to look at. But
right. In the fifth heaven, it seems like what's missing between these is Enoch gives an admonition. He sees them, their mouths, the silence of their mouths is perpetual. He makes an admonition. They listen, and then they break into song. So I wonder if he says something like, I mean, the Enoch story is often that the angels ask Enoch to help them with God. I wonder if he says, help me help you, please sing, right? Or something like this.
All right, let's check this out. And thence those men took me and bore me up to the 6th heaven. And there I saw 7 bands of angels, very bright and very glorious, and their faces shining more than the sun shining, glistening, and there's no difference in their faces, behavior, or manner of dress. And these make the orders and learn the goings of the stars and the alteration of the moon, or revolution of the sun, and the good government of the world. That's pretty interesting. And then way at the end, let's see, is this, oh, taken up to heaven on the 6th day of the month. So that's not really the same, but this is interesting. The 6th heaven.
Yeah, and the sixth heaven seems to have just angels in it.
Yeah,
Right?
and
This is they have. I mean, this is how you know they've they they the original scheme ended at 3, so they're just inserting like ranks of angels standing in the other heavens because they don't know what goes there.
yeah, there are some sections in Enoch that are really wild with like so many names being thrown out and like they're above this person, they're above this person, and it's like,
Right.
whoa. It's like Abraham 3 on steroids. Like there's one above another, and this one's above this one, and this one's above this one.
Yep.
All right, let's see. 7th heaven. It's got to be here. Yep. Those 2 men lift me up thence onto the 7th heaven, and I saw there a very great light, and fiery troops of great archangels, incorporeal forces and dominions, orders and governments, cherubim and seraphim, thrones and many-eyed ones, 9 regiments, the Lonet stations of light, and I became afraid and began to tremble with great terror. And those men took me and led me after them and said to me, pop that one in, have courage, Enoch, do not fear, and showed me the Lord from afar, sitting on his very high throne. For what is there on the 10th heaven? Oh, here we go. 8, 9, and 10 coming.
So they broke their scheme. Not everything has 7.
Yeah, well, and maybe it's because, I mean, 10 is also a number of perfection. And so maybe now that we're in heaven, it's like we've gone to that next threshold, like going from 7 to 10. I don't know. But
Yeah.
the Lord dwells there. He remained alone at the end of the 7th heaven, became afraid. What's befallen me? And I saw the 8th heaven. Oh, here we go. In the Hebrew tongue, Muzaloth. changer of the seasons, of drought and of wet, and of the 12 constellations of the circle of the firmament, which are above the seventh heaven.
I
I
think
measured.
Muzaloth is a what is the word? I think they mean stars,
Hmm,
and but they're misspelling it, and I'm trying really hard to remember how do you say stars in biblical Hebrew. It's something close to that. Oh, and 12 constellations is circles the firmament. It is the oh look, they've run out of things. They've run out of different. They used all the words they had for angels in the seventh heaven, and so now they stuck the zodiac as the next one.
hmm. Wrote down the height from earth to the seventh heaven, to the very lowest hell and the judgment place, and the very great open and weeping hell. All right, we know there's eighth because it's in one of those verses, but we'll see if there's any others. Saw the eighth heaven. Is this the same? No, this is new. Under the earth. We saw this before. There's eighth. Okay, it's not that. Let's see if there's a
Nine.
ninth. Nope. But we know there's a tenth.
Huh. That's interesting.
Okay, we just read that. Oh, Aravat. Sounds like Aramat. What is it? Mount Ararat. Yeah. Uh, Sitting on his very high throne in the 10th heaven. On the 10th heaven is God. On the 10th heaven, which is called Aravoth, I saw the appearance of the Lord's face like iron made to glow in fire and brought out emitting sparks, and it burns. It's so interesting to read some of the descriptions of people that see God and his glory, beyond all description, and then how they try to describe it.
Mazaroth is not stars, it's constellations. That's what the word is. And then sure enough, they put the zodiac.
So Mazaroth, not Muzaloth.
Well, this is being squeezed through I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah,
It's not in Hebrew, right? So they're yeah. But yeah, Mazaroth or Mazaroth is constellations.
they
Yeah.
spell it Mazaroth.
Yeah. Probably two Z's and it's not Mazz.
Oh, Mazaroth. Got it.
Yeah, like that. Is it
Stars in Hebrew.
no constellations?
Oh, constellations. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So we've got 10th and heaven. I
Okay. But you have to see if there's an 11th heaven.
I was just typing it. I was like, I have to at least look, even though the 10th is the highest.
Well, it's where okay, empty. So there's probably not any more above that.
Yeah,
12.
probably not. But 12 is another good number. So
12 isn't what? Oh,
that's
12 constellations.
ninth heaven. I
Oh,
misspelled
there
it.
he is.
I added an E before.
Oh. Kuchavim, that's Kochavim, that's stars in Hebrew, where the heavenly homes of the 12 constellations. Okay, so they stuck the 12 constellations in both 8 and in 9. And in one they called it Kocha, and that's exactly right. It's no question mark. That is exactly what it is. It is
Hmm.
Kocha. That's exactly right. Um and that's funny. Yeah,
That's amazing. Hmm.
as long as you have just the three heavens, everything, the three levels of the temple, the cosmic heavens, things have a place. When you are trying to fill much larger heavens, you run into problems. This is awesome. So this feels completely Jewish to me in that I don't see any discussion of like redemption by atonement by a redeemer. Um, I also think that passage, it basically says that, look, there is no wisdom outside of me, and there is no word outside of me, feels to me like some sort of non-Christian, and it needn't even be a Jew as we understand Judaism today, right? If it was writing in like the first century AD, it might be some Hebrew group that didn't become part of rabbinical Judaism. I don't know, but I think this is my guess is it all not Christian. Um, I like the way it honors Adam. It connects Adam to he's cosmic.
Mhm.
Um, I think that Michael is the first angel, and Adam is thought to be like Michael, and that's what it means that he's a second angel placed in the garden.
Hmm.
Um, it is weird that there is exactly that one reference to wisdom that sounds like wisdom is a different being, and then the rest of them don't, and one of them even seems to deny it. Um,
Yeah, we didn't go through the 30 verses here about angels.
yeah, we did not.
Um, that that'd be a little bit long, but we could skim that real quick. 200 angels. Angels took them up on their wings. That's Enoch. Angels who keep their terrible storehouses. Many angels guarding the treasure houses. Angels were dark looking. That's in the second heaven. Prisoners.
Kind of
Uh,
racist. Gosh.
pray pray for angels. This is interesting. Man of God, pray for us to the Lord.
This is the very common Enoch story, right? This is what first Enoch tells kind of a couple times, is that these angels come to Enoch and they ask him to intercede with them.
Mm,
So it's this very interesting where Enoch he doesn't atone, he's a herald, he pleads, right? He
hmm
carries their message. But it is a little bit like an inverted Jesus story. Like Enoch has to go to God on behalf of these sinning angels. And in some versions, I think third Enoch is the one. Um, Enoch becomes divine and sits on God's throne. So actually, we could see if that's in this story. When Enoch becomes divine and sits on God's throne, he usually has the name Metatron. So
Oh,
we can look up and see if Metatron is in here.
I think
Um,
that's just in third Enoch.
I
But
think that's third Enoch. Yeah, is my memory. It would be interesting to me if there is a reference to a Messiah or a
that-
Christ or a.
that's yeah. I was actually thinking we could do a couple of searches just to see what comes up if that does come up. Um,
I mean,
but
if they are, so one of the great phenomena that we need to be aware of in ancient writings is pseudepigraphy, and it's in the Bible. But basically today, right, we have this idea of intellectual property. If I write a book, I want everyone to know it was mine, and I'm the only one that can make money on it, and then my heirs until I've been dead for 72 years. That's a modern idea. In the ancient world, the much more common thing was, I've written this book, I want people to take it seriously, so I'm going to put somebody's name on it who's more famous than me, right? And so I'm going to say this was written by Moses or Isaiah or Elijah. And that's why we have so many books that are the book of Enoch or the book of Abraham or the book of Melchizedek, because people wanted their book to be taken seriously. And it doesn't mean they're being dishonest. It's just, it feels weird to us because that's not how we do it.
mhm.
But if this were a Christian text, but it's pretending to be written by Enoch, they might not use words like they might not use the name Jesus Christ, because they
Right.
might want to be more subtle. So they might talk about, an anointed one or a son of God or something like that. Um, in other words, if you're writing this in 300 AD, but you're pretending it's a prophecy from 4000 BC, right?
hmm
How would you present it? I think you might not put in the name Jesus. That's my point.
Yeah. So I just did a search for anoint with a wild card, and we read these two verses already about Enoch being anointed.
Yeah.
And there's Enoch answered to his son Methuselah and said, "Hear, child, from the time of the Lord, when the Lord anointed me with the ointment." There's been no food in me, and my soul remembers not earthly enjoyment. Neither do I want anything earthly. So he's probably translated. Um,
Hmm. Or he's an angelic being. He's not
yeah.
mortal.
Okay. I don't know if there's
I'd be interested in looking for. Oh, you already looked for Son of God, or you're looking for it now?
just, yeah, I just did it now.
Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
I I bet this is a Jewish book, which doesn't mean I think that has not decreased my interest in it. I'm just trying to figure out like who is this writer and what's his point of view,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. I don't know what other um, clues to look for
Yeah. What
in
about
that regard. Hmm?
what about the word tree? We saw that there are trees in the third heaven. Sometimes Christ is said to be, oh, there's very few. We already saw at least one of these.
Yeah. I just did a wild card for trees. Okay. So that adds a few.
Hmm. Not that many though.
Mm-mm.
And none of these that I'm seeing are obviously, like a reference to the cross, for example, right?
I see what you're saying.
Um, huh.
There is no unfruitful tree.
That's in
Right
in the
here.
the heaven.
Here there's, yeah, I just opened up the chapter. Go down into the paradise of Eden. Thence they go forth along the earth and have a revolution to their circle, even as other elements. Here there is no unfruitful tree. Every place is blessed. And there are 300 angels, very bright, who keep the garden, and with incessant sweet singing and never silent voices serve the Lord throughout all days and hours. I mean, I don't know if the word Lord, you know, is like Yahweh.
Right. What's it translating?
Yeah.
And also there's a second level of that query, right? Because it's what's it translating in Slavonic and what is that probably translating from whatever language this was first written in, which was probably not Slavonic.
Hmm.
I mean, the author at least remembers Hebrew, right? Or some author at least is putting in words like Mazaroth and Kochavim to say there's a Hebrew and the angel names ending in ill. There's like a Hebrew flavor.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't necessarily mean it was written in Hebrew originally, but maybe.
Is okay. So when you brought up the tie to cocoa bean here,
Yeah.
that is totally fascinating to me. But is that is that a Hebrew word or is that
Yeah.
like an Egyptian?
No, it's Hebrew. So Kohav is a star,
Mm-hmm.
and Kochavim is stars. So some of those words that are written in the facsimiles are Hebrew words, and I think they are written in the sort of transliteration. So unless you use technical diacritical marks, like we'll have a line over a long A, but not over a short A. You have a problem because Hebrew has like two different T's and two different H's and two different K's
Mm-hmm.
and different kinds of A's and E's. And so it gets transliterated into English different ways. And I think the way Joseph was transliterating those words, I think they were Hebrew. He knew they were Hebrew, and he was using the transliteration he learned from Josiah Seixas. I'm not sure, the Portuguese rabbi who came and taught
Oh,
Hebrew
school
to
of
the
the
school of the
prophets.
prophets,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um,
So I did jump out here to the lexicon to just plug in star, and so I
There
see
it is.
Kokob right
Yep,
there.
that's it.
And
And that line under the B means
mhm.
it is a B, but because of where it is in the word, you pronounce it like a V. So it's Kohov. In
Oh,
fact, the second, see, there's a line under the second K. This is the thing, right? Absent like these little dots and dashes, you have to kind of spell it out some other way. The first K is pronounced like a K. The second K is like a H, because it doesn't have a dot in it. The first K is on the right, looks like a backwards C, and it has a dot in it, so it's pronounced K. The same letter two to the left does not have a dot, so it's pronounced H. So Kohav, and yeah, it's Kokabim. It's that
okay.
word.
So I know this is probably a good place to ask this question. Somebody else had posted on that last video asking, what is the best way to learn Hebrew? And I think, started off in college taking a class,
No,
and
no, I started off as a missionary. I went down to a little Protestant bookstore in the terrible slum neighborhood in Genoa that we lovingly called the Gut, and and bought a like 19th century Hebrew grammar and dictionary and a super cheap Bible. Um, so I would not recommend that. There is a book though. I just recommended this to somebody. Hold on. I can get a recommendation. I think it's called Basics of Biblical Hebrew. And and I have the second edition. It's now in the fourth edition. Yes, Basics of Biblical Hebrew by help. Should I just put a link in the chat? Is that the easiest
yeah,
thing to
sure. I don't know if it'll appear in the video when I pull the chat up, or otherwise I'll just
you can
add
catch
it
it?
in.
Yeah. So it's by Gary Pratico and Miles Van Pelt, Basics of Biblical Hebrew. Um, Look, I think these guys are evangelicals,
Hmm.
and it's a just really clean, readable, easy to follow book. I think that all of the editions since like the second come with a CD-ROM, although now it probably unlocks content online or something.
Yeah.
There's a fun bonus. There's uh that I'm pretty sure it's this book where it's talking about the Vav conversive, and it explains how um is a fun bonus for us Book of Mormon fans. Um, a literal translation of the King James Bible would have many, many more appearances of the phrase "and it came to pass,"
Mm,
because the word Wayehi and it came to pass. The King James editors mostly just don't put that in there for the benefit of good style, but actually the historical books of the Old Testament are full of it. And I read that and was delighted.
hmm.
Yeah, that's a good one. I really like that.
So what, like, you're at a whole new level because you've studied Hebrew for so long. So like we're seeing these words and you're like, it just pops in. How much uh Hebrew does somebody really need to learn in order to just feel comfortable starting to make some associations that would be of interest to them?
Um, I mean, the truth is that sometimes knowing one word makes associations that are of interest to you. I think there tools like Strong's and like this is basically an online
Strong's.
Strong's Concordance Plus you got here up. Um, you unlock a whole bunch of the value if you can just read the letters. You don't have to even necessarily know what the word means,
Hmm.
right? But it lets you look at it and go, oh, hey, just because these two verses have the same word in English, they're not the same word in Hebrew, right? or you can see where things um, uh, hey, it's translated this way, but it could also mean this other thing, right? Like having, you don't have to get very far before you're empowered to use the dictionaries that can really can push you a lot farther. There are for sure. I'm a big fan of Margaret Barker, and man, her Hebrew is so much better than mine. She's very facile at spotting where just a tiny change in a letter changes the whole word. Or if you even said, hey, look, in the original scrolls, the when these things were written down, they didn't write punctuation and they didn't have spaces between the words. So it turns out for some verses, if you break up the words in different places, you get different meanings. You get different, you get different words. I you could be much better than me, right? The more you get into it, the more you can really unlock. But even like just at small levels, um, like like well, so like here's a fun one. Okay. I think it's Genesis 9. Uh Noah is drunk in his tent. I forget what verse it is. Might be around 10, 11, something like that. Um and because you get the Noachic commandments first. Um
21 here.
oh, 21. I was way off. Okay. Right. He's drunk within his tent. Okay. Except the problem is that the Hebrew doesn't say he was drunk within his tent. When you look at it, uh, you, it is immediately apparent that it says drunk within her tent, and and that was just not an acceptable understanding to people who transmitted the text. So they put vowels on there to try and say, look, it says her tent, but really you read it as his, right? Well, that raises really interesting questions. Okay. Or let me give you another one. Here's an example of a piece of information that like you only need to know one letter in Hebrew to sort of get information out of it. Isaiah 7. This and actually this I think I mentioned the first time I was on the show, or on the webinar, right? Isaiah 7, there's the prophecy about the virgin will conceive, right? And so it's Isaiah 7, I don't know, verses 11, maybe, something like that. And the King James says, a virgin shall conceive. But the Hebrew is unambiguous that it's the virgin. And that changes the meaning, right? A lot. And all you have to do is know how to say the word the, how to write the word the in Hebrew to recognize it, and it's one letter. So sorry, this is a lot of talking. It what I'm saying is this: the more you know, the more it unlocks. But it turns out that even a little can unlock things, right? Um, if you're looking at the right verse, and you know the right little.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Cool. Well, all right. We've demonstrated, I guess, taking a look at a lot of scriptures here. Um, we're back at 7 consistencies and 7 natures. So if I was, without us like spending the next several hours into the night trying to dig into this, uh, what would be your approach to trying to understand what these 7 things are that are listed here?
Man, that's interesting. I think sort of the next road I'd want to walk down is one that you started walking down, which is trying to equate them and go and try to see what I can see. Um, One of the things I'd be interested in trying to figure out, why are the orders of these seven things not the same? Can I make any sense out of what changes? Can I correlate these seven things to other things that I know come in groups of seven? Like, for example, the seven blessings of the Beatitudes in Matthew 5, right? If I was able to correlate these somehow to meaningfully to either the seven blessings or the seven blessed groups, right? The poor in spirit, those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, the meek, etc. Um, I'm not saying that I can. I'm saying that's other groups of seven, right? I'd be interested in that. I would. So my guess is this is a Jewish text. So my guess is that maybe the underlying text is in Hebrew. So one thing I would do is think about, what are the key words here in Hebrew, and can I get any kind of sense out of them, right? Another thing I
Sure.
might do is, uh, can I get any kind of poetic sense out of them, right? So seven terms, well, two groups of seven terms might make a nice seven-term chiasm,
Mhm.
or one group might make a nice chiasm that goes, three into a central term and then three back out. And so I
Right.
might try to make chiasms out of them separately or together to see if I could get any kind of a meaning out of them.
Yeah. So so while you were saying that, I mean, like for me, I would sort of like what we've done throughout the night. I would look at, where else are these words used? Um, and I'd never really thought about just staying within the book itself to just see how this writer looks at certain words. I I'm more of a global person, which is how I stumbled on this verse to begin with down here, wherever that went, verse 15. I was doing a search for something else and totally stumbled on that one verse, and I was like, oh wow, this is really interesting. And I had to see, what else is there in this section. So I make a lot of connections that way, just stumbling on interesting things.
I do too, and I think there's huge value there. I would not preclude that at all.
Yeah, but I like what we just did here tonight to stay within the book and say, what is this particular author, looking at? Like, it'd be interesting to see if anywhere else the word natures or consistencies is used that might be something relevant. And then,
And especially maybe if there's a group of seven, right? Like maybe seven
mhm,
natures is an idea that's shared across a family of texts.
yeah. Well, anyway, I think this has been a useful exercise. It's been super fascinating for me to sort of get inside your head a little bit and see how you think and how we've approached this. Um, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I totally. I think, if we'd done this, if we were assigning this for a class, right, one of the things we could do is we could say, hey, this exploration has generated a bunch of background literature reading you could do, right? So even something as simple as Wikipedia, and I don't know what the right articles are, but Second Enoch, I'd be interested to know what people think. Is this a Christian or a Jewish text?
Hmm.
Um, Ascent literature, right? The literature of heavenly ascent, but also wisdom, and there's probably another two or three kind of um, encyclopedia, or read in a good Bible dictionary, like the Anchor Bible Dictionary, um, to get that kind of that perspective of all of the texts together, or the whole field of the literature, right?
Yeah, that's. I think those are some good homework assignments for people. um, that, but it's been super fascinating to take a look at this closer. Certainly gives me a greater appreciation for this text, and I think there's a lot of value and truth in it, and hopefully some people will take a look at this. I think there's within the church, I think there's a certain fear of going outside the standard works, even though the Lord said in section 91, if you want to read the Apocrypha with the Spirit, there's a lot of truth there. It's an invitation that the Lord is giving us to, like, look at these things. And then I can't remember which section he says the book of Enoch, which will be testified of in due time.
Mhm.
And the book of Enoch wasn't around when Joseph was. It was decades later that this stuff was published and came to light. And so it fascinating that Joseph was again correct in that revelation that it came forth, and here we have it. And there's definitely some great truths and things within these books.
I'm super interested in the appendix about Melchizedek. To be honest, I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I actually that's probably going to be the next thing I should go to read. It's not very long, but that's really cool. Like, oh, we're going to preserve him by putting him in Eden, and then we'll have the flood.
Right.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's neat.
Well, thanks so much, Dave. I think we'll call it a night, and I really appreciate you being on and going through this little exercise together. Hopefully, it will be helpful for some people to just see how to dig into the scriptures.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Anytime.